The circular chamber held 12 seats, arranged in a descending spiral, each platform floating independent of gravity, each carrying an ambassador from the 12 species that controlled 92% of the known galaxy. The 13th seat at the center remained empty. It had been empty for 4,000 cycles, reserved for a race that had not yet earned its place. Ambassador Threx of the Veil Coalition tapped his clawed fingers against the armrest of his platform. His species had held a seat for 800 cycles. They had seen wars, plagues, the collapse of 3 interstellar empires. He had never seen the council look like this again. He said, "Explain it again." Holographic display at the chamber's center flickered. 3 orange markers. 3 border worlds, all dark, no distress signals, no Chinese letter. Chinese letter broadcasts, no transmissions of any kind, just silence. Where there should have been trade, traffic, military patrols, the constant background chatter of galactic civilization. The Elan ambassador spoke first, her voice a series of modulated tones, translated into universal speech. The worlds are Tarns, Voral, and Cephe 7. Mining colonies, population approximately 4 million sentients. Last contact was 72 standard hours ago, and the region. Threx asked. The display zoomed out. The 3 worlds sat near the edge of a designated exclusion zone, marked on council charts as quarantine. Zone 734. A small bubble of space, barely noteworthy, containing exactly 1 star. A yellow star, the human star, the Sol system. The Voldari ambassador said, his deep voice dripping with amusement. Tall, elongated skull, 4 eyes, arranged in a diamond pattern, skin the color of dried blood. Ambassador Vex had held his position for 30 cycles. He had never taken any threat seriously. Our primitive neighbors still burning fossil fuels when we first surveyed them, still killing each other over invisible territorial lines. They have barely reached their own moon. Then who attacked the colonies? Threx pressed. Vex waved a hand. Pirates, separatists. Equipment failure. The humans couldn't cross interstellar space if their world depended on it. Their fastest ships would take 10 cycles to reach the nearest star beyond their own. The council classified them as a preserved species for a reason. They are not a factor. The doors to the chamber opened. A Cath military entered, moving with the deliberate pace of someone carrying unwelcome news. Admiral Jax had commanded the border fleet for 15 cycles. He had never interrupted a council session. He approached Threx first, whispered something into the Veil ambassador's ear. Threx's scales changed color, a reaction his species couldn't control. Fear. The room noticed. Admiral Vex said, "If you have information, share it with the council." Jack straightened. His species resembled walking stone, gray skin cracked like ancient riverbeds, eyes deep set and unreadable. 30 minutes ago, our long-range sensor network detected an emergence from faster than light travel. The signature was unlike anything in our database. Pirates don't have FTL capable of reaching that region, Threx said. Who is it? The Admiral looked at the empty 13th seat, then at the holographic display, showing Sol, then back at the ambassadors. The emergence point is directly between Quarantine Zone 734 and this station. The vessel that arrived did not appear on any approach vector. It simply was there. No warning, no transit signature. No jump flare. That's impossible, Vex said. Chamber's lights flickered, every console, every display, every holographic projector in the room reset. Simultaneously. The emergency klaxon didn't sound. It couldn't. The system that controlled it had been overwritten by something that moved through council networks like they were made of smoke. A new image appeared on the central display. Not a planet, not a star, a ship, dark metallic hull. Angles that made no sense, dimensions that hurt to calculate. It was 4,000 m. From bow to stern, it had no visible weapons, no visible engines, no visible bridge, just a smooth, seamless surface that reflected nothing. Sensors tagged it. The data streamed across the display. Mass incalculable, energy signature unknown, crew complement unknown, point of origin Earth, Sol system, quarantine zone 734. The room went quiet, not the respectful silence of diplomacy, the cold silence of prey realizing they had been watched. Thrax looked at Vex. You said they couldn't cross interstellar space. Vex's 4 eyes were fixed on the image. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. The ship hung in the void, dark and patient, waiting for the galaxy to understand what it was seeing. But the galaxy didn't understand. It only felt something it had forgotten across 10,000 cycles of dominance, fear, and somewhere on that impossible vessel a human woman watched the council's panic on her display and checked her chronometer. The message would go out soon, but not yet. First, she would let them imagine the worst. They had no idea. Commander Yevon of the Vel Coalition stared at the tactical display and felt her stomach twist into a knot that had no business existing on. A trained military officer, she had commanded the Council Defense Fleet's 4th Battle Group for 6 years. She had faced pirates, rebels, and 2 border incursions from the aggressive Haiyan Collective. She had never seen anything that defied every tactical doctrine she knew. The numbers are wrong, she said. Her censor chief, a young Alan named These, shook his head. I've recalibrated 3 times. The ship's dimensions match the initial reading. 4,200 m mass, estimated at 40 million metric tons. That's larger than our dreadnought. Yes, Commander, it's larger than 3 of our dreadnoughts combined. Yes, Commander. He turned from the display to the viewport. The station's transparent alloy walls looked out on open space, and there it was, the human vessel, close enough to see with naked eyes. Dark gray hull, no running lights, no identification markings, no visible weapon ports or launch bays, just smooth angular shape that absorbed light instead of reflecting it. Her comms officer interrupted. Commander, Council chambers are demanding an update. The ambassadors want to know if the ship is armed. Ask the sensors. The tapped his console. Energy readings are inconsistent. The ship's power core is outputting enough energy to supply a small colony, but we can't determine where that energy is going. No heat emissions from weapons, no targeting radar, no active defensive shields. So it's just sitting there. It's been sitting there for 2 hours. No movement, no transmissions, no response to hails. You made a decision. Broadcast on all military channels. Priority Alpha, unknown vessel. You have entered restricted space controlled by the Galactic Council. Identify yourself and state your intentions immediately. Failure to respond will be considered Hostile act, the message went out. The seconds ticked by, nothing, she repeated. The hail, then again, then a fourth time. The human ship didn't respond. It didn't change position. It didn't power weapons. It simply remained in place. Monolith of deliberate silence that screamed louder than any threat. In the council chamber, Ambassador Vex had recovered his composure. This is absurd. One ship cannot intimidate the entire council. We have 300 dreadnoughts in operational readiness. We have planetary defense grids. We have weapons that can crack moons, and you're all trembling because a primitive species built a large vessel. Their FTL emergence had no signature. Admiral Jack said that alone should concern you. Then it's a trick. Sensor ghosts. Electronic warfare. They're trying to make us believe they're more advanced than they are. Threx's scales had returned to their normal color. He was watching Vex carefully, studying the Vulnerari. Ambassador's reaction. You seem very eager to dismiss this, Vex, because it's dismissible. The humans are children playing with technology they don't understand. The council has faced greater threats, have we? Threx asked. When the question hung in the air, no one answered, because the truth was uncomfortable. The council hadn't faced a genuine external threat in 3,000 cycles. They had grown fat on stability, on technological superiority, on the comfortable assumption that no one could challenge them. Something on the human ship changed. Every sensor in the station screamed simultaneously. Power output spiked. Energy signatures shifted. Weapon systems that weren't visible a moment ago became visible, not because they powered up, but because they had always been there. The hull hadn't been hiding them. The human eyes watching had simply chosen not to reveal them until now. The ship's configuration altered. Sections rotated. Panels slid aside. The smooth, seamless exterior transformed into something bristling with cannon ports, missile tubes, and energy projectors of designs no council scientist had ever imagined. Yi's tactical display updated. The weapon count was impossible. The firing arcs were impossible. The power allocation was impossible. The Dari ambassador, she said over the open channel, you said the species was primitive. Vex didn't answer. He was watching the ship's transformation, his four eyes wide, his red skin paling to the color of dried blood. The human vessel didn't fire. It didn't target anything specific. It simply showed the council what it carried, and what it carried was enough to end the galaxy's age of innocence. Commander Yi looked at Thais. Keep trying to raise them, Commander. If they wanted to talk, they would have responded. Then why are they here? The had no answer. No one did. The human ship waited. The council watched, and somewhere behind that dark hall, a woman with tired eyes and scorched uniform checked her chronometer again and waited for the galaxy's fear to reach its peak. Almost time. 3 hours and 17 minutes. That was how long the galaxy held its breath. 3 hours and 17 minutes of council fleet scrambling to defensive positions. 3 hours and 17 minutes of planetary governments issuing emergency protocols. 3 hours and 17 minutes of 4 million civilian broadcasts speculating, panicking, and praying to gods that hadn't been invoked in centuries. Then the human ship spoke, not to military channels, not to council diplomatic frequencies, to everyone. Every civilian broadcast network across every council world received the same Transmission simultaneously. News networks, entertainment channels, emergency alert systems, all of them interrupted their programming without warning. Their security protocols bypassed by encryption that made council codes look like children's drawings. Billions of screens flickered, billions of viewers leaned forward, billions of hearts beat faster. A woman's face appeared, human female, mid-fours by human aging standards, brown hair pulled back in a tight knot, a uniform that had once been crisp but now showed scorch marks along the collar and what looked like dried blood on one sleeve. Her eyes were the most terrifying thing on the screen, not because they were angry, because they were tired, the kind of tired that came from seeing something that could never be unseen. "My name is Commander Helena Rostova," she said. Her voice was calm, measured, the voice of someone who had already done the screaming and crying and raging. Now there was only purpose. "I speak for the species you classified as primitive, for the world you designated Quarantine Zone 734, for the people you forgot existed the moment you decided they weren't worth remembering." She paused, looked down. When she looked back up, something had changed in her expression, something cold. "We know what you did." The words landed like a physical blow in the council chamber. 12 ambassadors went still in fleet command centers across the galaxy. Officers stopped breathing. On a billion worlds, civilians who had never heard of Earth suddenly felt a chill they couldn't explain. Rostova continued, 23 cycles ago, your survey ships found Earth. You classified us as a preserved species, non-threatening, non-technological, not worth mentioning in your official reports, but one of your ships didn't leave when the survey ended. A Vulari research vessel, it crashed in our ocean. Your records show the crew perished. Your records are wrong. New images appeared beside her face. Wreckage site, alien bodies being pulled from the water by human rescue teams. Not hostile, not frightened, curious. Helpful. They survived, Rostova said. We saved them, we healed them, we learned from them. They taught us about your council, your laws, your technology, things you had forbidden us to know, things they shared freely because they were grateful to be alive. The image shifted. The alien survivors stood beside humans in a laboratory. Equations on a screen, schematics that shouldn't exist. Theory government found out. They sent a retrieval team not to save their people, to silence them. They killed the survivors. They destroyed the research facility. They left no witnesses, except they missed one. Rusta's jaw tightened. A single human child had been in the facility. She saw everything. She remembered everything. And she grew up with a question no one could answer. Why did they come back? Not to rescue, to erase. Transmission expanded. New footage. Darker, more disturbing. A colony of buildings on an unknown world. Human structures, human technology, human bodies. We built this place in secret. 40,000 colonists, men, women, children, using the knowledge the Voldari scientists gave us. We thought we were hidden. We thought we were safe. We were wrong. The footage showed the aftermath of an attack. Burned buildings, shattered equipment, bodies arranged, patterns that suggested execution, not battle. Someone found us. Someone destroyed us. Someone erased 40,000 human lives from existence and hoped no one would notice, because the council had already forgotten Earth existed. Artova leaned closer to the camera. Her tired eyes burned. We noticed. The transmission ended, not with a threat, not with a demand, just with those two words echoing in the silence. In the council chamber, Ambassador Vex was on his feet, his four eyes darting between the other ambassadors. This is a fabrication, a lie the Vari government never authorized. Then who did? Threx asked quietly. Vex had no answer. Admiral Jax was already accessing records. Commander Yevon pull everything we have on the Dari survey. Missions to the Sol region, every ship, every crew manifest, every report. Already doing it. Yever and LT Unk and GT's voice came back. Sir, there's something else. The child Ristoa mentioned the survivor. We're trying to identify her. Hurry. Footage shows a young female, dark hair, scared eyes, approximately 8 human years old. Jax felt something cold settle his chest, and now he was silent for a long moment. The facial recognition just matched. Admiral, that child is Commander Helena Ristova, the ship that had been waiting for 3 hours and 17 minutes began to move, not toward the station, toward the border, slow, deliberate, inevitable. The galaxy had stopped holding its breath. Now it couldn't remember how to breathe at all. Decades of arrogance. That was the true enemy. The council had grown so comfortable in its supremacy that it had stopped asking obvious questions like what happens when you leave advanced technology with a species that measures intelligence not by what it knows but by how fast it learns. The records were buried, not destroyed. The conspirators had been too confident for that, but buried under layers of bureaucratic noise stamped with classifications that required multiple approvals to access. Admiral Jax burned through those classifications like paper. Commander Yevon, patch everything to my personal display. The data streamed in survey mission logs, personnel files, anomaly reports filed and ignored. A Vulari research vessel named the Starseeker that had gone off course during a routine survey of Quarantine Zone 734. Last transmission atmospheric entry. Failure, emergency beacon active for 12 hours, then nothing, case closed. Species preserved, move along, except the emergency beacon had been manually deactivated, not by the crash, by someone who didn't want to be found. Jax pulled up the Starseeker's crew. Manifest, Sevenari scientists, 4 security personnel, all marked deceased. But the medical records told a different story. 3 of the scientists had survived the crash. Their vital signs continued for weeks after the official report listed them dead, then stopped abruptly, violently. The retrieval team, Jack muttered. What was that? Threx asked from his floating platform. The Vulari didn't send a rescue mission, they sent a termination squad, their own people dead by friendly fire. Vex was packing now, his elongated skull casting strange shadows in the chamber's light. You have no proof of the Dari government involvement, a rogue operation, a criminal conspiracy. My government would never. Your government, Jax interrupted, classified the Sol system as a preserve, and then spent 23 cycles refusing to allow any further surveys. Why? Because you were afraid someone would find evidence of what really happened. The other ambassadors were watching now. The Alayan ambassador, the Hyrn representative, the political aide, all of them silent, all of them calculating. What did the humans build? Threx asked. Jax pulled up a new file. schematics, equations, theoretical physics that council scientists had dismissed as impossible because the energy requirements were too high, the materials too rare, the engineering too complex. The research station wasn't just teaching them our technology, Jack said. The scientists were exiles, political dissident. They'd been experimenting with theories that the council banned 4,000 cycles ago. Theories about reality itself, about the nature of space, about what happens when you stop trying to work within the laws of physics and start rewriting them. And the humans understood this. The humans exceeded it. They took theoretical frameworks that council scientists spent centuries developing and turned them into working prototypes. In 23 years, Threx, the Vari scientists didn't create that ship. They gave humans the starting line. The humans ran the rest of the race themselves. The display showed recordings from the destroyed colony, human buildings, yes, but built on alien foundations. Technology that didn't look like council designs because it wasn't. It looked like something else, something that had evolved without constraints. The battleship isn't their only ship, Jax continued. It's their scout, their first vessel, the one they built to test whether their theories worked. It does. We're looking at it. Then where are they others? Vex demanded. Jax looked at the image of the dark ship hanging in space, at its impossible dimensions, its impossible weapons, its impossible silence. Commander Rova said they built a colony of 40,000 people. That colony required infrastructure, power generation, manufacturing, transportation. If they built one ship this size, they can build more. The question isn't where they others are. The question is why they only sent one. The chamber went quiet again, but this silence was different. This was the silence of species realizing they had made a catastrophic miscalculation. You classified them as primitive, Threx said, looking directly at Vex. You ignored them, you forgot them, and now they're reminding you that forgetting something doesn't make it less dangerous. It just means you won't see it coming. Vex's mouth opened, closed, opened again. This is still one ship, one species. We have fleets, we have armies, we have. You have nothing, Jack said, because you don't understand what you're facing. The humans didn't build that ship to fight us. They built it to survive us. That's the difference. We build weapons to dominate. They build weapons to ensure they're never victims. Again, one of those motivations is more powerful than the other. On the display, the human ship continued its course toward the border. It would arrive in 14 hours. The council had 14 hours to decide what happened next, but the decisions had already been made decades ago on a crash site in an ocean by a child who watched her world burn and promised herself she would never watch it again. That child was now a woman. That woman was now a commander. That commander was now coming, and the galaxy remembered something it had forgotten. Fear is patient. It can wait decades. It can cross interstellar distances. It can wear a human face with tired eyes and a scorched uniform. Fear had arrived. Fear had a name. Fear was Helena Ristova, and she was not finished talking. The council chamber had never been fuller. 12 ambassadors in their floating platforms, 200 military advisors lining the walls, a live feed to every planetary government in the council, and on the central display, still moving toward the Vulari border, The dark shape of humanity's answer to a question no one had asked. Commander. Helena Rostova's face appeared again. This time she was not alone. Behind her stood a wall of screens showing images that made even the most hardened military officers look away. Burned buildings, dead children, the aftermath of an attack designed not for conquest, but for annihilation. You've had time to check your records, Rostova said. Time to verify what I showed you. Time to pretend you didn't see it. The pretending ends now. She touched a control. The images on the screens behind her organized themselves into a timeline. Dates, locations, ship identifications. 23 cycles ago, the Vulari survey vessel Starseeker crashed on Earth. 7 survivors, all executed by a retrieval team sent by the Dari intelligence. 19 cycles ago, a human colony was established in the uncharted system U, designated as XR 779. 40,000 colonists. 15 cycles ago, that colony was attacked. The attackers were not pirates, they were not separatists. They were military vessels from 3 council species. Ambassador Vex stood. This is absurd. The Voldari military never. Voldari. Rista interrupted. Kath Vestin 3 species, 11 ships, 4,000 military personnel, all operating under classified orders from a covert division within council command. Admiral Jax turned to look at the cow. Ambassador, the stone-skinned figure sat perfectly still, his face unreadable. Next to him, the Vestin ambassador, creature of shifting colors and nervous energy, was trembling. Rostova continued. The attack lasted 6 hours. Your ships had weapons we couldn't defend against. Your soldiers had training we couldn't match. Your commanders had orders we couldn't understand. Not to capture, not to occupy, to erase. Every building destroyed, every system corrupted, every body accounted for. Her voice didn't break. That was the worst part. She spoke about the murder of 40,000 people, the way a surgeon spoke about a tumor. Clinical, precise, terrifying. We survived, not because you let us, because we had built shelters you didn't know about, because we HD Chinese letter Chinese letter our infrastructure, because we had learned from the Vulari scientists that trust was a luxury we couldn't afford. The images shifted. New footage, undated, unmarked, showing humans emerging from underground bunkers on a world that had been burned to ash. 112 survivors, children mostly. The adults died protecting them. I was one of those children. She paused just for a moment, just long enough for the galaxy to see the wound beneath the calm. I grew up in the ruins of my home. I learned to fight in the shadows of ships that had killed my family. I trained with weapons we built from salvaged technology in desperate hope, and I made a promise, not for revenge, for justice. There's a difference. The screen zoomed in on her face, her tired eyes, her scorched uniform. I am not here to conquer you. I am not here to destroy you. I am here to give you a chance that was never given to my people. She held up 3 fingers, 3 names, 3 commanders who gave the orders on that day. Voldari General Vor, KTH Admiral Thessalon, Commander Iles. Deliver them to me. Deliver their complete mission logs. Deliver every piece of evidence that proves the Council as an institution did not authorize this atrocity. Her hand dropped. You have 1 solar cycle, 18 standard hours. At the end of That time, if I do not have confirmation that these individuals are in custody and that their records are being handed over for public review, my ship will enter the Dari space, then Katharn space, then Vestin space. I will not fire on civilian populations. I will not destroy your worlds, but I will dismantle your military piece by piece, ship by ship, until there is nothing left between your people and the truth. Ambassador Vex laughed, a harsh barking sound that echoed off the chamber walls. One ship against the combined military forces of 3 species. You're insane. Ristad didn't smile, didn't frown, didn't react at all. General Vor is currently aboard the Voldari Dreadnought Sword of Justice, stationed at your border outpost Delta 9. Admiral Thessel is on leave at his estate on Kath's second moon. Commander Ill is attending a military conference on Vestin Prime. I know where they sleep, I know what they eat, I know the names of their children. She leaned forward. 18 hours starting now. The transmission ended, the chamber erupted. Vex was shouting, the Vestin ambassador was weeping, military advisors were screaming into comms. Admiral Jack stood in the center of the chaos, perfectly still, watching the display where the human ship continued its slow advance. The Dari fleet is mobilizing, Commander. Yevon's voice came through his earpiece. Kath and Vestin forces as well, there, forming a defensive line at the Vulari border. How many ships? 300. More arriving every minute. Jax looked at the human vessel, 1 ship against 300. It made no tactical sense. Commander, he said quietly, what aren't we seeing? You was silent for a long moment. Admiral, I've been running simulations. If that ship is as advanced as the schematics suggest, 300 dreadnoughts won't be enough. Nothing we have will be enough. Then what do they want? The truth, Admiral. I think they really just want the truth. But 18 hours was a long time, and the galaxy had spent 23 cycles lying to itself. Some truths once buried did not want to be found, and some humans once wrong did not want to forgive. 8 hours into the deadline, the council fractured, not along species lines, not along political alliances, along something far more dangerous. Trust. Ambassador Vex had been making private transmissions for the past 3 hours. Admiral Jax knew this because he had ordered every communication channel tapped the moment RTOA's first message aired. The council called it an invasion of privacy. Jax called it survival. The Dari fleet is moving into attack formation, Commander Yevon reported. They're positioning themselves along the human vessels approach vector. Katharn and Vestin forces are holding back. They're letting the Vulari take the lead. Jax observed. Smart. If the human ship destroys them, the other 2 species have deniability. Admiral, I'm picking up something strange. The Vulari dreadnoughts are powering weapons, but their targeting systems aren't locking onto the human ship. What are they targeting? A pause. Then Yin's voice tight with controlled alarm. Us, Admiral. They're targeting the council station. The chamber doors exploded inward, not from the outside. From the inside, a security detachment that had been stationed in the corridor opened fire on the council's own guards. Plasma bolts scorched the walls. Bodies fell. Ambassadors screamed. Jax hit the floor, his hand already drawing his sidearm 10 m away. Ambassador Vex was standing perfectly still, watching the chaos with an expression of cold satisfaction. You, Jax said. Vex looked at him. Did You really think the Voldari government would allow itself to be humiliated by a primitive species, by a child playing soldier? The security detachment 8 soldiers in the Dari uniforms formed a perimeter around Vex's platform. Their weapons were aimed at the remaining ambassadors. The council has grown weak, Vex continued, soft, forgetting that power must be maintained. The humans were a threat the moment they learned to build starships. We should have finished the job on that colony. We would have if the Ka hadn't gotten sentimental. The Ka ambassador stepped forward, his stone-skinned face cracked in what might have been anger or grief. We covered up your massacre because we were afraid of war, not because we agreed with its semantics. No. The Kathorn ambassador turned to the central display. Admiral Jax, I am transmitting everything, all records, all logs, all evidence. The Voldari conspiracy goes higher than General Vor. It goes to the Vulari Council of Elders. Itself, they authorized the attack. They ordered the cover-up, and they have been manipulating council intelligence for 23 cycles to hide the truth. Vex's composure cracked. You wouldn't. I just did. On the display, the human ship changed course, not toward the Deldari border, toward the council station, directly toward the council station at speeds that made no sense. Commander Artova, Jack said into his comm, the situation has changed. We have the evidence. We have the conspirators in custody. Stand down. Her voice came back, clear and cold. I see the Voldari fleet targeting your station. I see 8 armed soldiers in your chamber. Stand down. I don't think so. The human ship accelerated. The Vulari dreadnoughts opened fire. Plasma cannons, missile batteries, energy projectors that could crack small moons. Every weapon in the arsenal targeted the human vessel. Every shot missed, not because of evasive maneuvers, not because of defensive shields, because the human ship wasn't where the targeting systems thought it was. It was moving through space in ways that violated causality, appearing in one position, then another, then another. Each jump too fast for sensors to track their FTL drive. Ye breath. They're not just using it for interstellar travel, they're using it for tactical positioning, micro jumps, milliseconds. We can't predict where they'll be because they're not moving through normal space at all. The human ship appeared directly above the Voldari flagship, not close enough to collide, close enough to touch. General Vorth Ristova's voice broadcast on all channels. You have 30 seconds to order your fleet to stand down. If you do not, I will disable every ship under your command. Your crews will survive. Your vessels will not. Vor's response was a second volley. Closer this time, almost close enough to hit. Almost. The human ship moved again. Not away from the Vulari fleet, through it, passing between dreadnoughts with meters to spare, its hull never touching, its weapons never firing, just moving, just demonstrating that it could go anywhere it wanted. Chinese letter. Chinese letter. Chinese letter. Chinese letter it wanted, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. 20 seconds. 10-5. V's voice came through, ragged and desperate. Cease fire. All ships cease fire. The Vulari fleet went dark. Weapons powered down. Targeting systems went offline. The human ship stopped moving and hung in space, waiting. In the council chamber, Vex was on his knees. His security detachment had surrendered. When they realized no reinforcements were coming, Jack stood over him. Sidearm still drawn, you should have delivered the killers when she asked. Jack said. Vex looked up. She's going to destroy us anyway. You know that this was never about justice, it was about revenge. On the display, Commander Artova's face appeared again. But something was different, something had changed. You're wrong, Ambassador, she said. If I wanted revenge, I would have fired the moment I arrived. I wanted something else. I wanted the galaxy to see what you really are, and now they have. She looked at Admiral Jax. The evidence your KTHN colleague transmitted is sufficient. I am transmitting it to every civilian network in Council space. Every world will know what happened. Every government will have to answer for it and the killers. Jax asked. General Vor is in custody. Admiral Thessel and Commander Iles will be apprehended by Cathan and Vestan authorities within the hour. The Deri Council of Elders will face public trial. That is enough. She paused. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter, human. I didn't come here to become what you are. I came here to remind you what you forgot, that actions have consequences, that silence is complicity, that there are species in this galaxy who would rather die fighting than live on their knees. The human ship began to turn, not away from the Council station, toward something else, toward the empty space beyond the Vuldari border. We'll be watching, Artova said, all of you from now until you prove you deserve to exist without someone holding you accountable. Don't make us come back. The transmission ended. The ship jumped to FTL without signature, without warning, without trace. The Council chamber was silent. The galaxy was silent. Billions of sentients stared at their screens, at the evidence of atrocity and cover-up, at the face of a woman who had done what no Council fleet could do. She had told the truth, and the truth was more terrifying than any weapon. The aftermath took 3 standard days to unfold, 3 days of arrests, confessions, and the slow, painful unraveling of a conspiracy that had poisoned the Council for decades. 3 days of civilian riots on the Deri worlds, of Cath military purges, of vested officials throwing themselves on the mercy of their own people. 3 days of the galaxy realizing it had been living a lie. Admiral Jack stood in the Council chamber, now empty except for the cleanup crews scrubbing plasma. Scorch marks from the walls, 12 seats still floated in their descending spiral. The 13th seat, the empty one, remained untouched. It was never about the seat, a voice said behind him. He turned. Commander Yi stood in the doorway, her scales a mute gray that spoke of exhaustion rather than fear. The humans, Jack said, they don't want a place on the Council. No. They want the Council to earn its place. Jax looked at the empty seat again. 4,000 cycles, it had waited for a species worthy of joining the galaxy's ruling powers. 4,000 cycles of assuming that worth was measured in technological advancement, military strength, cultural achievement. The humans had none of those things by Council standards, and yet they had done what no Council species could. They had looked at an injustice and refused to look away. They had built a weapon not to conquer but to compel. They had faced the combined military might of 3 species and asked not for surrender but for accountability. What happens now? Ye asked. Jax didn't have an answer. No one did. Theory. Council of Elders was in custody. The military commanders who ordered the attack would face trial, but the system that allowed the cover-up, the assumptions, the hierarchies, the comfortable belief that some species mattered more than others, that system was still intact. Rotova said they'd be watching. Jack said I believe her. It'd give them something worth watching. Outside the station, in the dark void, where the human battleship had hung like a threat made manifest, a single probe drifted. It had appeared an hour after the ship vanished, launched from somewhere in the Sol system, traveling at speeds that made Council propulsion look primitive. The probe's only transmission was a looping message, not a threat, not a demand, just 4 words, repeated in every language spoken in Council space. We remember, do you, on Earth, in a bunker hidden beneath mountains that had once been volcanic. Commander Helena Resto sat in a room filled with screens. Each screen showed a different Council world. Each world showed citizens debating, protesting, demanding answers. Some worlds burned. Some worlds wept. Some worlds simply sat in stunned silence, trying to understand how everything they believed had been wrong. Commander and aide said the Council is requesting diplomatic contact. They want to negotiate formal relations. Rotova didn't look away from the screens. Not yet. They're offering reparations, trade agreements, military alliances. They're offering what they think we want. They don't know what we want. The aide hesitated. What do we want? Commander. Rova finally turned. Her face was still tired. Her uniform was still scorched. But something behind her eyes had changed, something that looked like the beginning of peace. I want my people to sleep through the night without dreaming of fire. I want the children who survived that colony to grow up in a galaxy that won't let it happen again. I want the Council to understand that power without accountability is just tyranny waiting to happen. She looked back at the screens. They're not there yet, but they're closer than they were yesterday. The probe continued its broadcast. The galaxy continued its reckoning, and somewhere between Earth and the Council station, in the dark void where battleships could appear without warning, humanity waited, not for revenge, not for surrender, for the galaxy to remember that fear was not a weapon, it was a teacher, and the lesson was just beginning. 6 months later, the Council ratified the first major reforms in its history. Transparency mandates, independent oversight, the creation of a civilian review board with the power to investigate military actions without approval from the species involved. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't enough, it was a start. Admiral Jax retired from military service and accepted a position on that review board. He spent his first month reading files that should never have been classified, learning truths that should never have been buried, and wondering how many other atrocities were waiting to be discovered. Commander Yevon was promoted to Admiral. Her first official act was to order a complete survey of every preserved species in Council space, not to evaluate their threat level, to ask if they wanted contact, to ask if they had been visited, to ask if they had been harmed. No one answered her messages from Earth. The probe continued its broadcast. The human ship did not return, but the galaxy knew it was there, waiting, watching, remembering. On the first anniversary of the transmission that changed everything, Commander Helena Artova sent a final message, not to the Council, to every human who had survived the colony's destruction, to the ones who had rebuilt in secret, to the ones who had built the Ship that should not exist. We did it. She said, we made them look, we made them remember, we made them afraid. She paused, looked down at her hands, at the scars that would never fade. Now we have to decide what comes next. Do we become what they were? Do we build more ships, more weapons, more walls, or do we build something else, something they never thought to build because they were too busy being afraid of each other? The screen showed her face, older now, softer around the edges, but still carrying that core of iron that had carried her through decades of loss. I don't have the answer, none of us do. But we have something we didn't have before. We have a voice there, listening, and as long as they're listening, we can speak the truth. No more hiding, no more secrets, no more colonies burning while the galaxy looks away. She smiled. It was a small thing, barely there, but it was real. So speak. Tell your stories. Remember the ones we lost. Build something worth remembering. And if anyone tries to take it from you, if anyone forgets what happened here, remind them the transmission ended. The galaxy waited for something else, some final threat, some declaration of dominance. Nothing came because that was the lesson. The humans didn't need to dominate, they didn't need to conquer. They needed only to exist, to remember, to refuse to be erased. And in a galaxy that had grown comfortable with forgetting, that was the most terrifying thing of all. The battleship never reappeared, but neither did the silence that had preceded it. The galaxy talked now about justice, about accountability, about the species in Quarantine Zone 734 that had looked at the most powerful military forces in known space and said simply no. No to fear, no to forgetting, no to being classified as primitive by civilizations that had forgotten what the word meant. Decades later, historians would call it the turning point, the moment when the council stopped being a hierarchy and started being something else, something messier, something fairer, something the humans had shown them was possible. And on Earth, in a bunker beneath mountains that had once been volcanic, a woman with tired eyes in a plain uniform watched her people build, not weapons, not ships, homes, schools, gardens, the ordinary, extraordinary architecture of survival. Her chronometer beeped. She looked at it, then at the wall of screens showing Council World, still struggling, still learning, still afraid. She reached out and turned off the screens. Enough watching, she said. To the empty room, time to live. Outside, the sun was rising, the same sun that had risen on Earth for 4 billion years. The same sun that the Council had classified as irrelevant. The same sun that now illuminated species that had looked at the darkness of the galaxy and decided to shine anyway. Fear had gripped the galaxy when Earth's battleship appeared unannounced. But fear was not the legacy humanity left behind. Hope was, and hope once planted was much harder to kill.